Basically, the presentation here is it's all about PPC, how we generated over $107 million in revenue for investors with PPC. And we're going to talk about how the channel works and what you can do to get started with this kind of channel, why you might want to and why you might not want to. We've got three specific things within PPC, three strategies or three aspects of a strategy that I find people commonly mess up on that we're going to talk about and how we do those things and what we learned tends to work the best. To talk about PPC and how it kind of fits into the marketing mix, I think it's useful to look at marketing channels on this scale from outbound to inbound. Outbound means you're going towards these motivated sellers, and inbound means they're coming to you. So if we look at how these marketing channels work, there's a couple aspects that are true. So the first one here at the top, as you go from outbound to inbound, you'll generally find that lead conversion goes up. And I think it's pretty logical to assume lead conversion is going to go up, because if I'm going to a seller that didn't contact me and I'm asking them to take an offer on their house, what's the likelihood that they want to sell their house to me? Probably relatively low, right? Versus if they come to me and say, hey, could you please buy my house? It's much more likely I'm going to convert that person, right? So lead conversion goes up as you get more inbound with your channels. Secondarily, the cost usually goes up as you go more inbound with these channels. This could be considered in a lot of ways sort of an order of how expensive marketing channels are. So what you'll notice about inbound marketing channels, they tend to be expensive. Outbound marketing channels tend to be cheaper. And then the last part here is time and operational expense, where as we get more outbound, we're usually requiring a lot more time. Let's just say you were to look at like a big wholesaling business that operates only on outbound. I expect them to have a much lower revenue per head in the company compared to a company that operates mostly on inbound. They're going to have a high revenue per head. They're going to have a lot less operational expense, less headaches, et cetera. So this is what I want to do today. I want to teach you how you can run PPC better than most real estate investors by taking a machine learning led approach without a six-figure budget. This is kind of what we do. Like if you look at what Bateman Collective does, we try to make this channel, it's kind of amorphous and difficult of PPC, and make it something that's more simple and can be implemented for you, easier to run within your business. The key here is what we want to do is we want to make asymmetric bets. We don't want to just burn money on a marketing channel, but we want to thoughtfully use marketing channels and make sure we're doing things right so that we have the highest possible likelihood of making a return on our investment from that marketing channel, not just losing money. And that's the risk that every business around the world makes in some way, shape, or form. And I can tell you most of the people I see that are having a really hard time with this channel in this industry, there's the three things I'm going to tell you about today. If they were doing those three things right, they would have a much higher chance of success. So that's why I'm talking about those specific things. So this is the first one. Your landing page can be your biggest bottleneck. And I'll talk about this briefly. The first point that's important to recognize here is this is not pay-per-lead marketing. Pay-per-lead marketing, if you're familiar with it, usually someone's generating leads and then they're selling those leads to you. And the way it works is you pay for the leads. And if the lead doesn't match certain criteria, you might get a credit from that lead, or whatever the case is, right? So I want to be very clear. This is not pay-per-lead marketing. And sometimes when people get this confused with pay-per-lead marketing, that's what leads to them not managing this quite properly, because they assume they're paying for each lead they get on PPC. And we do calculate at the end of the day what your cost per lead is, but that's not because you paid per lead. It's just because that's what it worked out to in terms of a cost per lead. So why is this important? Well, PPC, it actually stands for pay per click. The way this works, when people search on Google, you can show your ad there. And when somebody clicks on your ad, you're going to pay for that click. After that happens, you already paid, and the full responsibility of whatever happens is yours. So let's just say you pay for that click, but then your landing page never loads. What happened? You just paid money for a click and that person didn't actually end up becoming a lead. Or what happens if you pay for the click and then the person sees your website and then they're not interested in working with you based on that and they don't fill out the form? What happened? You just paid for the click. And the reality is this happens all the time. We expect about 80% of the clicks we buy aren't going to become leads. That means we have a 20% conversion rate, which is actually like good. That's how a quality digital marketing campaign works. But the name of the game is how high can you get that conversion rate? And where a lot of people fail in PPC marketing is they feel like it's too competitive or something like that. Meanwhile, the problem is that they're paying a lot of money for clicks and they're just not converting them into leads at the rate that they need to. So here's a few tips of what you can do with landing page optimization, the 5 rules, according to us, of landing page optimization. The first one is you want to use a landing page, not a home page. So if you have a website, your website is I live in Utah. I could call it like utahhomebuyers.com or whatever I want to. And likely I don't want to send my PPC traffic to that website. Because what happens on that website is there's going to be a menu. That menu is going to have a lot of different places where people could click, and those can serve as distractions. Usually a quality landing page for PPC, the way it works is it has one sole purpose, and it's built for PPC, which means that there are no other distractions on it. Someone's going to come to your landing page. They're either going to convert into a lead or they're going to leave. And we find that when we do that, we have a higher conversion rate. And then there's other aspects of the things that you would do to make a page really good for PPC. If you do those to your website, you might hurt your website despite it being good for PPC. So use a landing page, not a homepage. If you work with us, we actually build a landing page for you. We don't charge you extra for it or anything. There's no way to work with us without us building that for you, just because it's such an essential piece of your success. The second thing here, proper form structure. A lot of people will ask a whole bunch of information that they want from the lead right in the first form. What we like to do is ask for the minimum information that we need for this to be considered a lead. And what that does is it makes it so it's much more likely that people actually will fill out the form. And what we do after that is we then ask them for all the other information we want. And what we find is if we ask them for just their phone number and their property address first, and then we ask them the other 8 questions we have after that, one by one, 80% of people that fill out the first part will fill out the entire thing. They'll give you all the information you want. But if you ask them for a lot of information at the beginning, then your rate of conversion to that point is significantly lower. So what we like to do is ask for the minimum information first. You call them right away, and then we give them a long form to go through to fill out a lot of information. And the primary goal of that is not for you to have that information, even though 80% of people will provide it. It's just to keep them on the page so that they're occupied, so that when you call them, hopefully they haven't gone somewhere else and they haven't filled out another form. Another mistake that people make is they have just one page. Like there could be people searching for different things on Google, but you have just one page that you send them all to. I don't know if you guys have ever clicked on an ad and then felt like when you got to the landing page, that's not the ad that you thought you clicked on. That's not the page that you thought you wanted. The more you can make the landing page match the ad and match the experience that someone's expecting, then the higher likelihood that they're going to convert through the whole process. So we like to use either multiple or dynamic landing pages. Dynamic landing pages just being a page where you change the content according to what someone searched in order to capture the most people possible. The fourth one is page speed. If your page loads slow, then you're going to lose a lot of people who click, but they never actually have your page load by the time that that their patience runs out. And the very last one is that CRO is a necessity. CRO stands for conversion rate optimization. You need to be testing different landing pages, because the reality is you can talk to somebody who's a great marketer who's going to design a great landing page, but nobody knows what's going to work best until you actually test a page versus another page. And that's how you know that one works better than another. And that's a commonly overlooked but really important part of PPC, because all you have to do is improve your landing page conversion rate from 10% to 11%, and you end up with 10% more leads, which could mean the difference between an extra deal or not getting that extra deal. So that's, I would say, for any PPC campaign, conversion rate optimization is a necessity. If you do these 5 things well on a landing page, that makes a big difference. Like I said, if we do your landing page, we do all these things. So item number 2, let's talk about location targeting. So this is really easy. There's 2 rules. One way I like to say this sometimes is like, in court, they say the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. It's kind of how we do location targeting. You want to target the right locations, of course, but beyond that, you want to target all of the right locations, and you want to target none of the areas that don't have value to your business. So to explain that, this sounds straightforward enough, but this is probably the number one thing we see messed up in campaigns in this industry, because a lot of people end up working with some generalist agency that doesn't understand real estate. And if you're just used to being a generalist agency, then you're looking at, like, if I'm selling this e-commerce product, I don't care where the person lives that buys my product. I just want them to buy the product, right? But if you're looking in real estate, the product is the house. So where they live is actually a pretty big deal. Because if you get the wrong lead from the wrong area, you could end up with a deal that you can get under contract that you won't actually be able to disposition, or you won't be able to be super profitable on. But on the other hand, if you go too narrow, you will drive your cost per lead up significantly, potentially for no good reason. So the idea with location targeting is you have to identify where you want deals. You have to target all of those areas, and you want to take like a broad approach to that, where hopefully you don't have like 3 counties you do business in and you only target one of them with PPC. You want to target all the areas you want to do business in with PPC to get your cost per lead as low as you can. But the risk that you run is if you get into those areas that are outside of your target area, sometimes they get really cheap. I saw somebody mention that they're from Detroit here. So I'll give a good example of this for Detroit. Detroit's one of those cities where the closer you get to the center of the city, the lower the property values tend to be. As you get further away from the center of the city, now the property values start to go up, right? So if you look at how much money you can make on a deal in Detroit as a wholesaler, in certain areas of Detroit, the answer is not very much money at all, because it's a really rundown property that you might be buying for a very small amount of money and not be able to sell for maybe even that amount of money. Like you could find a house for $5,000 that you can't even move at $5,000, right? And then if you get out into the suburbs area, maybe you could be making $15,000 or $20,000 or $25,000 on a deal. So if you were to target all of Detroit and the suburbs with a campaign, you would be violating number 2 here, potentially, unless you really like those inner city deals. Because what would happen is there'd be lots of people searching for a way to sell their house in inner city Detroit, and your competitors are probably avoiding those areas. And what that means is that you're probably going to end up with the leftover leads that they didn't want, and that's going to drag down your return on investment. So that's just one example of how this works. Another example would be, let's just say I operate in 2 different cities, yet I just target one of them with my ads. I might get 50% more leads if I were to target both of the cities, as long as they both have value for me, right? So that's the other angle of this, is you want to target all the areas that are good for you. There's a few different business models that we see people tending to pursue here. I mentioned national marketing before. Some people are doing that, where they're doing many markets, and they might just be doing PPC across that, and they spread the budget across a lot of them, and they end up getting a significantly lower cost per lead. The other option is that you can do a small number of markets, or one market, and usually to grow a big wholesaling business in a market like that, you're going to need to stack a lot of marketing channels. It's not a matter of if you do this or this, but probably that you do that and that, once you get past the point of doing your first few deals. Let's talk about this last thing. Whoever has the most data wins. So for those of you driving trucks right now, what's on the screen is more budget equals better results. So I want you to think to yourself for a second, do you think this is true? Do you know this is true? And the reality is, for most real estate investors, this is usually true when it comes to a marketing channel. If you have more budget, you're going to get better results for that marketing channel. But I think the reason that it's true is where people get tripped up sometimes. More budget equals better results, but why does more budget equal better results? Well, more budget equals more data equals better results. Because in online marketing, the way that the system functions is that the more money you push through your Google Ads account, the more seasoned that account becomes. The more seasoned it becomes means like the more it starts to learn what's working and what's not working, the more it starts to get more and more data on a granular level to understand where the best leads and the most leads are coming from. So if you have a brand new account, you're going to be at a significant disadvantage to somebody who has been spending a lot of money for a long time, because they're just going to have a lot more data in their account. So more budget does equal better results, but it's because more budget equals more data, and more data equals better results. What we try to do as a company is we're trying to figure out, is there a world where this bottom line can exist, where this top line does not have to exist? Is there a way we can get more data despite us not having more budget? So I want to show you an example of how this works in an account. So this is one of the clients that we work with. You can see that they have this campaign. It's been running for a pretty long time. This particular campaign has spent $285,000 on PPC marketing, right? So if you look traditionally, the way that things would work is this account would have $285,000 worth of data fueling it. But what's interesting here is if I click on this, this is called our bid strategy. This is kind of like the place where data is held that helps Google learn. If I click on this and I ask Google what data is fueling this bid strategy, you can see here there's $26 million worth of previous spend data that's behind that bid strategy. So the simple way to explain this, the simple way that this works, is that as a company, what we do, what makes us unique, is we take all of our clients' data and we pool it together. And when we pool it together, we do it in such a way that allows you to still own your data, still have your own account. But because we pool the data together, you have significantly more conversion data. And what that means is you don't have to deal with as long of a ramp up when you launch campaigns, and your campaigns can get to a more optimized place than they would have otherwise. And you have ability to optimize for things that you wouldn't be able to. That's why our clients have a higher return on a higher cost per lead compared to other people in the industry. It's because everything is dialed towards how do we get the best quality leads, because we have enough data to be able to do that, where we wouldn't otherwise likely be able to pull that off. So that's a simple thing. That's really like secret number 3, is whoever has the most data wins. This is something I understood even 7 years ago when I started this company, and it's the reason that I believe in what we do. It's the reason that I chose to build this the way that I did.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.